I think we're in a very interesting place right now when it comes to dating because, I mean, it's not like we've never been in an interesting place, to be honest, because being attracted to men is a phenomenon in itself, let alone dating them. But I do observe that things have gotten to a place where we are witnessing what I would call desperation. And before we dive into this conversation, I think I need to preface by saying that you're probably not going to like this episode if you are somebody who is desperate but isn't in a place where you are prepared to admit that what you're feeling is desperation, because it's a word that we probably feel shame about for understandable reasons. But the reason why I say that things have gotten to a place where I'm observing desperation in a lot of women is because of the rise of the femininity coaches on YouTube mainly, and the sudden growth of this like soft life conversation. And I'll explain. First of all, don't you worry, I have nothing against soft life. What I'm quite fascinated by is this sort of visual presentation of what this soft life is. And for those who might be confused about what is soft life is a what I'd consider a colloquial term for living a life that is stress free, which usually involves luxuries like traveling, having designer items, being able to have a partner that can maybe contribute to that lifestyle. But usually the soft life is a life where you don't really work and you get to just play and slay and look cute and make great aesthetic content on Instagram that involves palm trees and really cute serif fonts. Okay, but aside from the sarcasm, I do think that the reason why I have a gripe with the rise of the femininity coaches on YouTube is because I think that it is definitely contributing to the desperation I'm witnessing. And to give further context, when the femininity coaching or the femininity conversation first came about, I want to say this would have been 2019. And I don't know anybody who would have missed it, especially if you're someone that used Twitter back then. I used to use Twitter up until maybe like 2020. But 2019 was a period where online dating was quite the rage. Not that online dating has never been popular, but I think 2019 was like a period where people were really, really curious about online dating and giving things a go. I mean, there were apps like Raya, all these apps I'm going to say they still exist, and I have no affiliation at the moment with any of them, but there were dating apps like Raya, which is like almost like a Soho House equivalent, where you have to be approved or given a referral by someone else who already has a membership on there, and it's usually for like cool people. It's almost like industry dating. And then there's Hinge, there's Bumble, there's Tinder, there's Field. So, we have seen a rise in dating apps, and I noticed that the pandemic obviously peaked that because people felt lonely, and dating apps experienced a higher volume of people paying for subscriptions. So they now have bigger budgets to be able to pay for more advertising, which is why you are seeing a lot more dating app ads. Like I think Bumble, I'm seeing a lot of Bumble ads. But, and by the way, like I said, no affiliation with none of these apps at the moment. But I do think that 2019 was an interesting period because even this is when I was like transitioning through a phase that involved me picking up some ideas that I later eventually just dropped because I was like, this ain't working. I don't think this is even necessary. And I've now have transitioned through that to the place I'm in now, where I feel like I'm a lot more sure of where I stand, where I want to go, what works for me and what doesn't. But during that 2019 period was when the femininity thing became a buzzword. And even I was of the belief at one point that in order to attract guys who have money or attract guys who are attractive or generous, then you need to be feminine. And I cringe. I cringe saying this, but I feel like it's important context for this conversation. I cringe saying this because now I'm not of that belief, and I'll explain what belief I'm of now and why I've left that behind. But the general sort of ideology back then in 2019 through to now, where the femininity coaches are still coaching, is and was that you need to embody a version of femininity that somehow gives the impression that you are a quote unquote high value woman, because in effect, you would, if everything is in place and done correctly, and if you're feminine enough, you should attract a high value man. I really, 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 really hate the phrase high value man. But anyway, for sake of conversation, let's continue. If you embody the femininity correctly, then you will attract a high value man. Usually a high value man is just another way to describe a man who has money, is generous, and I guess he understands and appreciates a woman's femininity. And why I feel like I'm cringing is because the ways that I see a lot of these coaches, especially as of more recent times, the ways that I see these coaches exemplify said femininity is usually in a way that's kind of outdated, and it's just a bit basic. But I want to be really respectful, and I want to make it clear that in me saying that I find femininity coaches cringe, I don't want anyone to necessarily feel like attacked or a type of way. But if people feel attacked or a type of way, then I can't control that. What I can control is what I say and how I put it across. So hopefully it will be understood. But what I'm noticing from these femininity coaches is that, like, the general sort of sentiment here is that you need to, like, be feminine and, like, do your paint your nails. Don't do masculine things, like, I don't even know what they're calling masculine, but just don't be doing masculine stuff in it. Like, be feminine. I'm seeing videos like how to be feminine. I'm like, wait, if you're a woman, yeah, whether you are cisgender, and cisgender meaning like you identify with the sex you were assigned at birth. So, like, I would consider myself cisgender. Like, I was born with a vagina and people told me that I'm a woman, so I guess I'm a woman. That's how I feel in it. I identify with that. So I'm a cisgender woman. Whether you're a cisgender woman or a trans woman or just a femme that dates men, usually the consensus here in terms of femininity and being coached to be feminine is that you need to kind of essentially lean into definitions of femininity that I guess like men would be the most responsive to. And the men that you ideally want to be more responsive to you are the ones that have money and the ones that are like high value. So that includes having your nails done, like doing your hair, talking in a feminine voice. And yeah, like going to high value places to meet men. I say this now because I can joke about it, yeah, but like everything I'm talking about, I've tried it out. I tried all of it out. I've tried, and the thing is, yeah, I'm not saying that it doesn't work. If what you want is to attract a guy who has, I'm not saying it doesn't work, but just remember that like there's still intellectual effort that has to be involved if you want to date men, whether they have money or not. You need to have an ability to think critically, which I don't think these femininity coaches are encouraging. What they're encouraging you to do is to be visually sort of like fitting the bill, but I don't think most women know how to actually like advocate for themselves when they get to a situation where they come across a guy who is this sort of high value man. Like, okay, well done, you found a high value man, now what? Because usually I think a lot of women trip at the finish line, and that finish line is usually when the Mr. High Value man has like stopped replying to their texts, or Mr. High Value man took them out somewhere lovely and he's now becoming more distant. And because a lot of these women don't know how to carry themselves, they kind of just slip back into their usual conditioning where they become a bit clingy or like panicky or a bit like, why are you not talking to me? Or they do the thing where like you think you're being a boss lady by telling a guy, and I've done this before, and this is why I'll tell you to not do this, but you think you're being a boss lady by telling a guy who maybe took you out on a couple dates, who you're attracted to, and he's like creating the dating experience that you want to feel as a high value woman. Come across this guy, he's now kind of ghosting. When he finally reappears, you kind of send him this sassy message like, hey, I don't appreciate it when you disappear after we were talking, and yeah, I don't appreciate, like, it just comes across as clingy, it comes across as desperate. You might think you're being a boss by laying down your rules, like, yeah, don't do that again, because yeah, but he just sees that as like, you don't have anyone else to talk to, so maybe you're not as high value as you're making yourself appear to be. Or he just sees that as like, you're pretending to be something that you're not. Because if you are a real boss girl, yeah, and you're talking to a guy, this guy might be someone that is, he's got money, or he might even be a celebrity or a public figure, or just some sort of guy that just seems like a really great catch in your mind, yeah. You might be talking to this guy and he's done that thing where he's disappeared on you for a certain period of time and he's reappeared. Instead of doing that whole sassy, like, where were you? You just act like nothing happened. Like, he's just another guy that you're talking to because you have other guys you were talking to. And listen, if a guy fancies you and he believes that he can afford to take his foot off the gas, then that tells you everything you need to know. Like, you go and give your attention to guys who won't take their foot off the gas. But if you're not talking to multiple guys and you're not going to be able to experience that because you've put all of your attention and all of your desire and you've projected all of this stuff onto this one guy who you feel like you finally caught from all the femininity coaching. Secondly, the problem I have with like the femininity coach thing is that like a lot of these coaches, like, you don't need someone to teach you how to be feminine. You don't need someone to coach you. Because if someone is coaching you, then there's something that you're obviously not applying and you keep on coming back to ask for help. I feel like, so right now, I would say, yeah, I don't believe I need to offer courses. I've had people ask me to like coach them. And the reason why I don't want to do that is because none of this requires coaching. You don't need to be coached into walking away from a man who is saying one thing and doing another. You don't need coaching for that. You don't need coaching to know how to look nice. Like, and also you don't need coaching to know how to be feminine, because femininity has multitude of forms that it can exist in any person. Like, listen, I know women, yeah, who are kickboxers, and if you see the fine men, if you see the fine, sexy men that they attract, and these men are doing well for themselves, it could be argued that a woman kickboxer is not feminine. Meanwhile, you're here shaving your personality down because you think that you need to be what these coaches have taught you is feminine to get a man. Like, men aren't even all that, man. Men are not even good enough for you to remove your personality for, or for you to suddenly start leaning into outdated ideas of what femininity should look like. Another thing that's quite interesting is I've been observing. It's taken me a while to talk about this because I've been wanting to like observe before I make my thoughts known. But I've been observing the ways that people talk about Lori Harvey, who is a really, really great example and a great sort of case study in like the whole femininity coach discourse, coupled with what it means when a woman just like dates on her terms. And obviously there are certain layers and privileges that someone like Lori Harvey has that grants her access to such men. But stay with me. Why I think Lori Harvey is a great example is because I've seen quite a divide in the ways that people talk about Lori Harvey, especially women. I think a lot of people are jealous of her. In my personal opinion, she's not doing anything wrong. Like, she's a young woman who dates men. Sometimes she'll be public with who she's dating. And then if that relationship ends, she'll be seen dating another guy. Like, that's normally how it works. But I'm seeing some femininity coaches trying to like use Lori Harvey as a case study as to why she's not doing it right. And it's like, these femininity coaches don't strike me as people who you need to be listening to, because they don't have I don't think they have the access Lori Harvey has, which is what grants her the ability to date a variety of A-list or even just like famous men. But secondly, it's like Lori Harvey is in a league of her own. She does what she wants. She has her own money. She has access to her dad's money. She dates men who has money. She does what the fuck she likes. And I wouldn't say Lori Harvey's a bad example of being a young woman and just exercising your right to make your own choices. But some people in the femininity coach land are like saying that she's I saw someone calling her a whore because she has multiple relationships with men and she posts herself, claiming those men. So, like what I mean is, when you have a boyfriend and then you post photos of you and him like doing something that clearly shows that he's your boyfriend, like on Instagram. Like she's done that with several men she's dated. And so what? Each and every one of those men have done several stuff to spoil her and to treat her good. Like, I've not seen her date a man that's a bum. So yeah, she's doing amazing. But these femininity coaches will have you thinking that you need to, what's it called? You need to make yourself smaller and just like become this roboticized version of yourself. I feel like if you're thinking too hard about it, you're usually not going to get the result you want. Because for me, personally, my approach is not about trying to like encourage women to date quote unquote high value men. I'm big on just like encouraging women to create their own happy ending, however that looks like. For me personally, I've made it clear several times that if I'm going to be dating a man, there are requirements and there are prerequisites that I would expect to see in him that would make me feel more likely to give him a chance, let alone access to my body. And that includes him being generous and financially endowed and a kind person, a funny person, an intelligent person. And I've met those men in instances where it could be argued that I wasn't being very feminine. Like, what I mean is, if you see the way I dance when I go to parties, yeah, it could be argued that how I dance is not feminine, because I'm not dancing in like a, those girls, yeah, that go to parties to just sit down and be cutting their eyes at girls who are actually dancing and enjoying themselves. I feel like those girls who are just sitting down, like imagine hearing Wizkid come on in a party and you're just still sitting down holding your Jacquemus bag. Like, that's very weird. Like, I don't understand that. Like, why are you here? Because me, my head will somehow be on the floor. My ass will somehow be in the air. And I'm shaking my nyash and I'm dancing. I don't give a fuck. I enjoy dancing to Afrobeats. I enjoy partying. And that is seen as, according to femininity coaches, it could be argued that the way I dance is not feminine because it's seen as like lewd or classless. But to give a quick example of like a time when I was being quote unquote unfeminine and I still managed to get the attention of a guy who most of these femininity coaches would like salivate over. Like, I was shaking Yash and ignoring him. I was shaking Yash and ignoring him. Like, I was doing my thing. Like, I would just say, right, if you're in a place where you really, really, really want to meet a guy who is doing well for himself and you genuinely do want to like experience a semblance of really worthy and memorable dating experiences, you need to just go back to the drawing board and start from the whole scratch and just remember who you are. Because you being feminine isn't why a man is dating you. Or you being, what's the other one? You wearing linen and Jacquemus is not why a guy's going to be attracted to you. And also, what you need to be really wary of is if you're putting on a version of yourself that feels like a performance, like it feels like you have to rehearse a bit, or it feels like you're having to kind of like think of how to act so that it gives a particular impression, you're going to end up attracting men who don't genuinely like you for who you are. They are attracted to a version of you that you're performing, and that performance can only be kept up for so long, because usually, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, people usually trip up at the finish line, and that finish line they trip up at is where they don't know how to carry themselves when that guy loses interest, or they don't know how to carry themselves in a situation where you've been put in charge. Do you know how to be in charge? Do you know how to boss men around? Because the truth is, yeah, from my personal experience anyway, and remember I've always said, like, I don't like to claim the men that I date. It's not that I'm ashamed of them, but it's that I just like to keep my private life like away from Instagram and the internet. But I feel like the men that have been attracted to me are men who a lot of these femininity coaches think you have to be feminine to attract. Like, I'm covered in tattoos. It could be argued that, like, you know, having tattoos, it's not really like a feminine thing to do. You know, you need to put on your body shimmer. And when Wizkid comes on in the club, don't dance. Just hold it in and sit down and be looking around looking for a man in the club. Like, who does? What is that? You need to go and live your life. Go and live your life. Because men across classes, across tax brackets, are attracted to women who live exciting lives. I'm so sorry. I would strongly recommend you stop listening to femininity coaching on YouTube and just go and figure out who you are. And you need to be able to walk away from men, even if they are quote unquote high value men, because I don't really understand what a high value man is. If, according to the femininity coaches, a high value man is a guy who has money, like, I think that's just an underdeveloped idea, because even if a guy has money, doesn't necessarily make him a high value man. I don't even know if a high value man exists. I don't think that exists. Just like how I don't believe alpha men exist. Like, a guy can be dominant, but the whole alpha thing just feels a bit like, okay, if you say so, buddy. Like, I personally don't. I'm actually not attracted to men who do the whole alpha thing because it feels weird. I'm attracted to men who have power, but they enjoy sharing that power with the women that they adore. That to me is hotter than the men who try to just like dominate women. Like, you need to be really careful of the femininity soft life thing as well, because sometimes you can encounter men who like have quite a coercive approach, and you tell yourself that he's a leader. Like, babe, that might be an abuser. You're telling yourself you want a man to lead you. Lead you to where? Everybody, what is this about? I want a man who's going to lead me. Do you know we now have City Mapper? We have Google Maps. We have TomTom. Why do you need a man to lead you? Why do you need a man to lead you? Lead you to where? What is he doing that you can't do for yourself? Because if this is about a man having leadership in your life, yeah, you need to ask yourself why you are so ready to give your power away. Don't you think it'll be better if you were with a man who wants to just support you in getting there, rather than him leading you there? How can he lead you to where you want to go? You know where you want to go in this life. How can a man get you there? Because what I personally align with is the idea of dating men who have the means to support you so that you can get where you want to get to in your life. And he's not leading you there. He's supporting you in that process. You are the one that's leading yourself. He is lucky to be there. And if he's going to be there, he should be contributing to your well-being. He should be he should be emboldening your dreams. Like, not leading you. So what? He should just lug you along like a Birkin bag, just carrying you around, and then you just be like, you nodding, like just a docile accomplice in his life. So you want to be the supporting act in his life. When you're the headliner of your own life, you want to make your name the small font on a festival poster, yeah, and you want to make his name the big massive name. You're the tiny font. You're the supporting act. And for what? Because a femininity coach told you that? Or because femininity coaches are telling you that it's masculine to be clear about what you want from men? I'm just saying, yeah. Again, I want to make it clear that my work is not about trying to help you get a man. My work is about helping you get over the need to have a man and live a life that's so exciting that if men are going to be in your life, they're going to be in your life on your terms. That's what this is about. Because if you wanted to use my work to try and get a man, this probably won't help you. If anything, this is going to deter men who are not good for you. And that is the whole point. there has to be a filtration process. There has to be a filtration process when you're dating men, okay? You can't just accept whatever comes your way because he's wearing cargo. What's that color of trouser? Is it cargo trouser? What's that trouser that they wear to go to watch horse racing? That silly trouser that's rolled up at the hem and then the loafer. So because a man is wearing loafer and a polo shirt, yeah, you think he's a high value man? You think because he's wearing Tom Ford glasses, he's a high value man? You don't know if he's a misogynist. You don't know if he's stingy. You don't know if he's gonna make you have sex with him before he buys you a handbag, or you don't know if he's gonna gaslight you using the same femininity, soft life rhetoric that he knows you be watching on YouTube. You know, guys have access to the same internet we have, right? So they know that a lot of women are watching the femininity stuff. Some of these guys will go as far as watching it too, so they know what to mirror. That's why you have to be really, really careful, and that's why you need to be so evolved that you are beyond what these men would categorize as just feminine. Like, sorry, but the guys who only date women that they find feminine are usually men that are quite misogynistic. Like, what about you having a life? What about you having hobbies? Can we talk about having hobbies? Can we talk about that? Because what I love about this podcast of mine is, aside from being able to connect with women around the world who have decided that they want better for themselves, it's nice to have a platform where we can just talk about ways to make our lives more fulfilling outside of men while still accepting that we have attraction to men. Like, two things can be true at once. And in that same breath, I just want to see a world where we don't fall down that weird trap of becoming a cardboard cutout of ourselves so that men will want to date us. It's like, bro, you need to go outside. Don't just touch some grass, but run your fingers through that grass. Like, you need to really, really just like go and live your life for yourself, because there's nothing that excites a man more than a woman who lives for herself. And I've been so many versions of myself that I've seen what works and what doesn't. And now I feel like I'm in a place where, you know, there's one thing, yeah, experiencing what the femininity coaches would call the success of being picked by a high value man. I feel like when it comes to femininity coaching, I guess like the success is that a guy has chosen you and the guy has money. But what about like even beyond that? What about you are so authentically yourself in all the rugged and real and sweet and funny and spicy ways that you still end up attracting a guy who happens to have all the qualities that the femininity coaches are trying to coach you into attracting? What happens then? Like, what happens? What happens if you end up just being yourself and you still attract the same men that these women are unfortunately bending themselves into certain shapes for, just to still attract them anyway if you just be yourself? Like, have we explored that possibility? Because I do think that a lot of the femininity coaches are desperate. I do think they're desperate, and I understand why they're desperate as well. Like, when I'm referring to them as desperate, I'm not saying it from a place of they're bad people. And I'm not saying that everything they're saying should be thrown away. I mean, there's probably some value in what they're saying, but I do think a lot of it is desperation. Like, it just becomes a bit weird when like everything you're talking about is on how to get a man, how to get a man, how to get a man, how to be more feminine, how to attract more, how to. It's like, do you know what? That's desperation. And people can feel desperation from your demeanor, from your energy, from how you carry yourself. So if you're someone that has like fallen down that hyperfixation rabbit hole of femininity coaching, there's a reason why you're not experiencing the success that you're supposed to experience. And again, I say success in quotation marks, and I use success interchangeably with finding a man who is quote unquote high value. Like, in femininity coaching land, the successful outcome is finding a high value man. But I'm sorry, yeah, finding a man who makes you feel good is not going to be the best thing you ever experience. Like, there should still be more to aspire to. And this is why, again, I worry about hyperfixating on something too much. Because a lot of these femininity coaches, they're in their own hyperfixation as well. A lot of them, they also haven't found the man or the men that they desire to meet. And it's because they are all trying too hard. That's what I think it comes down to. And that's why I left that femininity thing. Remember I said at the beginning of this podcast that back in 2019, I tried it out and I was like, this just feels like I have to think too much. And when I say it feels like I have to think too much, I felt like I was thinking too much about things that have less importance. I would rather be thinking more about the way this man is treating me, you know? Because I do think that if you date men, there has to be a level of critical thinking. I'm sorry. I get a lot of comments from people saying, you know, in response to my content that why can't I just be myself? Why do I have to, you know, think about what it means when a guy says XYZ to me? Why can't I just naturally just like date and just be me? It's like, well, the reason why you can't just be yourself with men when you're dating them is because the reason why you can't just be yourself with men when you're dating them is because a lot of people who are saying they're just being themselves, a lot of people are just acting out through their attachment style, you know? What I mean by that is like if you're an anxious person, and that's usually most women, if you're an anxious person and your attachment style makes you someone that feels a bit unsafe when you don't hear from a guy you like for a while or you feel a bit clingy, you can't just hashtag be yourself. You have to really observe and be conscious of when you find yourself slipping into patterns of behavior that make you come off as desperate or that can put you in dangerous situations. If you're somebody who is a Klingon to every guy that you come across who's attracted to you, that's really, really dangerous because you don't have the patience, you don't have the like self-awareness to slow down and really ask yourself if this guy even deserves the chance to be picked by you. You're in a hurry to just find someone that's going to make you feel secure. And that's because you're acting out for your attachment style. So what you're calling being yourself is you giving your power away. I do think that there has to be a level of critical thinking when dating men. You can listen, on this podcast, there's going to be a running theme forever. And that running theme will be two things can be true at once. Okay, so it can be true that you are being conscious and critical of the choices you make when selecting men as potential partners to date. And you can also be yourself. But being yourself has to come from an evolved place, which is why I keep saying, if you don't know how to be single for at least a year, but you want to date men, I worry for you because you're probably making decisions that are driven by your attachment style, that are driven by your desire to feel accepted and chosen and picked, as opposed to if you knew how to be single for a while and you've developed a level of self-control and you are bold enough to walk away from what doesn't feel right for you, even if it sounds and looks really good, then you can still be yourself because the self that you are being is a self that you have worked on. You know exactly what it feels like when a guy is making you feel weird and you know that it's not worth staying around for, so you just move on with your life. But you also know exactly what it feels like when a guy is actually making you feel good and you know that you can trust that feeling while things are great. That comes from an evolved version of you who has done the critical thinking. You also, as a person who chooses to date men while being a woman or a femme person, you also have got a lot of unpacking to constantly be doing, because remember that most men are operating from their own selfishness and they're putting their desires first. So you need to be asking yourself, is this man acting with my interests being considered? You can't just go off of the impulsivity of, I'm just going to be myself. I'm just going to let things happen how it happens, because that's how you get got. Do you get? And what I mean is, you know, if you think being yourself is just going with the flow, that's you handing your power away. I don't really understand the whole going with the flow thing, because usually what people mean when they say they're going with the flow in dating is they're just like letting the guys who they're attracted to make the decisions because they feel more feminine when men are making all decisions for them. And it's like, this is why I keep coming back to the theme of we need to implement critical thinking when dating men. And that critical thinking shouldn't just be directed towards men, but it should also be directed inwards. You need to really be asking yourself why you're straight. At least once a year, you need to check in and review. Am I still straight? Yes or no? Okay, you ticked yes. Why am I still straight? What do I enjoy out of dating men? What have men done for me that makes me feel like I should still be giving them my time? Because if you're not asking yourself these questions and you're not seeing useful answers that you've asked, you're not seeing useful answers that you've gotten from asking yourself these questions, then really and truly you're on autopilot. You're on desperation autopilot, and the femininity coaches are making money off of you. They're making money off your desperation, and they're all desperate too. Because ain't nobody coming around to tell me that I'm desperate when you see the men in my comments telling me that I'm the female equivalent of he who shall not be named and his first name begins with A and his last name begins with T. Do you think that my content makes men attracted to me, or do you think my content makes men want to be misogynistic towards me? Because if I was someone who's desperate, I wouldn't be making this podcast. Like, if anything, my podcast is probably seen as the opposite of attracting men. It's probably making men find me annoying, which makes me laugh, because I'm no stranger to men finding me annoying, because these same men usually be in my DMs anyway. And also what's interesting is that on the more positive side, I've experienced men who follow me and see my podcast and they're in my DMs and they're attracted to me. And these are men who the femininity coaches would die for. Like, I've got men in my DMs who, you know, successful tick, money tick, good looking tick, and they've seen my podcast, they've seen me cussing men out day in, day out. They probably are irritated by it, but they like how attractive I am, because two things can be true at once. So it's like, yeah, you need to focus on being a version of yourself that isn't performing for male desire. Because I think a lot of the femininity coaches are just like coaching you to like essentially, it's kind of like you're just grooming yourself for men. And that's just so, what a waste of your life. Men are not all that. Even if you complete the femininity coaching year and you get your A star in femininity, men can still treat you badly if they want to treat you badly. Do you know that? It's like the whole idea. I saw someone saying, I don't want to name this person because I don't want to bring bad vibes her way. I don't think she's a bad person, and I think what she was, the idea that she was embodying does come from a place of desperation. But I saw this person saying that if a guy doesn't treat you like a princess, then it's because you're not a princess. And it's like, yeah, but guys, didn't we see what happened to literal Princess Diana? Like, didn't we see what happened to literal, actual royalty Princess Diana? Like, she was a whole actual princess, and she was still treated badly by a man who she was married to. And not only did that man treat her badly, so did his whole family, and that ill treatment resulted in her death. So the idea that like a guy didn't treat you like a princess because you're not a princess is just an underdeveloped idea. And again, it comes from the internalized misogyny that women are responsible for how men choose to treat them. You could be a literal princess and you can still experience misogyny. Similarly, you can be a woman who carries herself well. You could even be me and you can still experience misogyny from men if they want to be misogynistic towards you. And where you have a responsibility is to walk away when it don't feel right. That's it. If you can walk away, walk away. Guys aren't gonna treat you special unless they want to. Men are responsible for their own decisions. And that's where I worry when it comes to the femininity coaching, because a lot of women can end up internalizing this belief that, oh, maybe men aren't treating me well because I'm not good enough. Maybe men aren't treating me well because I'm not pretty enough or feminine enough. It's like, no. I know women with shaved heads and loud mouths that be getting what they want from men, left, right, and center. Some of these women are doms. Which gets to mind, which beautifully leads me to my next point. And every time I want to talk about dominatrixing, I feel like I always have to give a disclaimer that I am not trying to evangelize on behalf of the dominatrix community. I am not trying to get people to become dominatrixes. Rather, I am pointing towards this lifestyle to draw a parallel and hopefully create some insight here about this whole idea that you have to make yourself small and feminine and bite-sized and ditzy so that men will find you attractive if those men have money. Do you know there are dominatrixes, who be doing... Chai. Do you know what a cash meet is? Okay. So in dominatrix land, there is this is more femdom. So, findom, financial domination. It's a bracket under femdom, which is feminine domination of men. So there's something called a cash meet. A cash meet is where you meet with a sub and your meeting point is an ATM. When you meet at the ATM, he withdraws money, you collect it from him. That's a cash meet. I've seen women who are dominatrixes who have done cash meets in Crocs, bro. In Crocs and joggers and their house t-shirts. And they've done that. They've still been able to exude their power, exude their femininity, exude their entire being in a way that feels comfortable and authentic to them, because we all know that real power starts in the mind. It don't start with how you make yourself look or what you're pretending to be. It all starts with how you truly view yourself and how you embody that. That's what it comes down to. So I just think we need to be really, really vigilant, and I like to always keep in mind that we're all arriving at this from a different place. So I'm trying to be understanding and sympathetic in how I talk about this, because I don't want it to come across as though I'm just bitching down on other women who are having a hard time, because I understand that the reasons why we date men aren't just because we're attracted to them. For some of us, it does feel validating for a man to pick you and love you, and for some women who have a harder time based on how they look or their self-esteem, them feeling picked by a man is massive for their self-esteem, which is something that unfortunately you have to work on, because if your self-esteem relies on a man and your happiness relies on a man, then he can control your life. Because if he can control your mood, then he can control your day, and if he can control your day, he can pretty much control you. So that's why you have to really, again, develop some critical thinking skills when it comes to why you date men. And another thing, you see how they say, don't do grocery shopping when you're hungry. And the reason why they say don't do grocery shopping when you're hungry is because you're going to end up buying stuff that you don't even need because you're buying from hungry eyes. Well, similarly speaking, don't date when you're desperate, because when you date from a place of being desperate, you're going to end up picking men who aren't even that good for you, but because you're desperate and because this man appears to embody the stuff that you think other people will be impressed by, then you just lug him into your life and just drag him around like a bloody Jacquemus bag. And you're not happy, but at least it looks good on Instagram. It's hella women that's just lugging these men around. You don't know, some of these women are paying for their own weddings. You don't know, some of these women are paying for their own dates with these men. You don't know, some of these women are buying their men's clothes. You don't know. You just don't know. So I say all this to say, just be vigilant and be careful in it. And you don't need someone to coach you if you want to date men. I don't believe you should be paying for coaching to date. I think what you should be paying for is therapy, actually, because, and I'm not even saying this to be mean or sarcastic, I'm dead serious. You don't need to pay for coaching for femininity or dating apps. You need to pay for therapy because you need to develop a self-esteem that's so robust and so intact that no matter how many men you come across, whether they're men that you actually do want to date or men that you end up not dating, you still know who you are. You still have a home in yourself to come back to, because men are never going to be a replacement for your own safe space that you've created within yourself. They are simply an add-on, and they can be a really beautiful add-on. I always want to make it clear that yes, I enjoy being mean to men in certain situations that require that. But I'm of the belief that men can be great. Dating men can be beautiful if that man wants to be there for you. It's all down to him. There's nothing you can do to prevent a man abusing you other than developing a mental framework that allows you to identify traits of abusive men, and hopefully if you're in a position to, walking away as soon as you can. The sooner you walk away, the better. Yes, it might feel disappointing to walk away because maybe you guys have been FaceTiming for a while and now you really like him. Maybe you've gone on a few dates and you're really drawn to him and you feel like you've already started to do that thing where you're projecting all these scenarios onto him and why you think this is now the one. And then you realize, you know what, this guy isn't it. I've got to walk away. Therapy will help you with that. Not paying dating coaches, not paying femininity coaches. Femininity coaches are not going to take you closer to the man that you want to meet. I think what's going to take you closer to the man you want to meet is you get into a place where you actually don't give a fuck whether you meet him or not. Because you're too busy doing bad bitch activities, like finishing your degree, like pole dancing, like gardening, like hanging out with your, just doing shit that's purely for you. Live for yourself, man, because you know what? Men are going to be around forever and ever and ever. As long as you're alive, there'll be men to date. And you can date well into your old age if you want to, because old people date too. And you know how we know old people date too? Because we be seeing old people getting married. How does that work? But ultimately, I just want people to just keep in mind that you don't, date. Men aren't worth being desperate for. And usually men can tell when you're desperate. And what will men do when they know you're desperate? They will take advantage. If a man knows that you're desperate to meet a quote unquote high value man, and if that man fits that description, he's going to monopolize those features about himself and he's going to make you do stuff. He's most likely going to make you do stuff so that you can experience this high value. And you don't have to do that. I promise you, you will find more joy and more benefit from dating men if you actually knew how to walk away from men. Because usually those men who you want to attract, that you're paying femininity coaches to teach you how to attract, those men are most attracted to women who know how to walk away from them. And femininity coaches ain't really going to tell you that, because those femininity coaches probably don't know how to do the same. Because if what they were saying was working, they wouldn't need to be coaching people. Usually what they say would be able to be applied, and then those people will see results. And if you are applying these simple ideas that we've touched on today, including having critical thinking when dating men, including knowing when to walk away, even if it looks and feels good and sounds good too, including not dating when you're desperate. If you have been applying those sentiments and you're still not seeing success being that you're not finding someone that you want to date, then it's okay to just sit down and fold your hand and go and face your books. It's okay to be single, you know? You don't have to have someone in your life in order for your sexiness to be validated. There are many powerful women who are still single, and it's not because of circumstances, because they are just happy with where they're at. Like Tracy Ellis Ross is a great example. I don't know if she's dating at the moment, but she has been someone throughout her, I think for the past few years, Tracy Ellis Ross has been a really great example of a woman who's living for herself. And she's in her 50s. She's living for herself. She looks good. I bet she smells good. Her career's popping. She started her natural hair care business. She's doing her thing, and she doesn't strike me as someone that's like, oh, my life is going so amazing, and yet I don't have the one thing I feel like I'm supposed to have, which is a man. It's like, I beg. Men will come and go, whether you're feminine or not, but you is forever. Like, you are here with yourself for the rest of your life. So what will you do to make sure that you have a close enough relationship with yourself that whether a man comes in or goes out, you will not lose yourself? That's the most important thing you should be focusing on. Not trying to be more feminine for men who are fucking idiots. And majority of these men who you're being feminine for, they are patriarchal and misogynistic. Like, to me, it feels a bit scary if a man's attracted to me because I'm feminine. Because that means then that he has expectations of certain roles I should be fulfilling. And it's like, no, I'm a non-conformist, okay? I make my own rules. I choose my own destiny. Because you know what it never was? That serious. It was never that serious. If you know that TikTok sound, then you know, innit? But jokes aside, none of this shit is that serious, bro. And none of dating men should be serious enough to be paying femininity coaches to teach you how to date men. Like I said, save the money you would spend on a femininity coach and instead use that money for therapy, because that's going to take you way further in your life than any femininity coach can.